All right, we are rolling. Okay, so good morning to everybody. We continue with Reish Samech Hey in Orach Chaim with Shabbos, and last week, last week we saw some of the Aruch HaShulchan's discussion that related to the beginning of this siman. We will review Sif Aleph, but what we saw was that if you have a mechanism where the oil is dripping consistently over the course of Shabbos into the nair, and thus keeping it. The idea here is sometimes you can't put all the oil in the nair that you want it to last a certain amount of time, and the nair can only hold X amount of hours, and you want X plus. So you put something else that will drip into it, so that way, as the oil in the nair is consumed, more oil is being added slowly into the nair. And we said that this is going to be a problem because of Mechaber. And there was the discussion. The Rambam thought this was one issue that was more a rabbinic issue, an issue that is more related to the fact that the oil was set aside, and therefore I'm worried that I'm going to take this said oil and start using it. But it was muktzah really, and we saw that the Rosh was of the opinion that no, indeed it is mechaber. It's a problem of extinguishing the flame, and even though the oil is up here and the candle is here and it's dripping, what do you mean I can't touch the oil? The oil is really not even connected at all to this fire over here. How am I extinguishing the flame? And we talked about the idea of gram kiboy, of the idea that you were causing the flame to go out earlier, that there was some sort of mechanism put into place that would allow it to last 5 hours, and by me taking the oil, some of the olive oil, and putting it in the salad, now it's only going to last 4 hours. So even though I didn't directly cause the flame to go out right now, or even be minimized in its size right now, the fact is that since a mechanism was set into motion that would allow it to last 5 hours, and I have taken away from that, that is called gram kiboy, and that is also prohibited. So that is the Rosh's explanation. Now, the part that is agreed upon by everybody is that it's usher. The question is why. The Mishnah says that it is a problem, and everyone argues, well, what is the problem exactly? So let's now read so that was our preamble that we saw last week in our Shulchan to really hopefully give us some background into this discussion. And now let's dive into the Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Berurah on Reish Samech. So let's read. We did read it. Hi, Simeon.
Hi, good morning. Rav, we learned in a previous year about davar shemalachto leisur, using it on Shabbos for something that is mutar. And we learned that you're allowed to. Is the reverse now also true? Something that is mutar, but is intended to use for something that is osur, is there a prohibition for that?
If you have a klisha malachto leheter, you mean you're permitted to use it generally. Then the Gemara talks about that you are allowed to move it l'tzarach gufo for utilizing it itself. You can move it l'tzarach makomo. You need the place, and even mechama l'tzel, even to protect the item. The Gemara's example is from the sun to the shade. You don't want your item to, let's say it's out in your yard, and you don't want it to get rained on and damaged that way. You are allowed to move that on Shabbos. By a klisha malachto leisur, by a vessel that is used primarily for prohibited purposes, you are not allowed to move it mechama itself from the sun to the shade. You cannot just move it for protective reasons. There has to be a practical benefit to you, tzorach gufo, or l'tzorach makom, or the place where it's currently resting. So if you're trying to relate that to here, right, the oil on its surface, nothing wrong with olive oil. You would say actually that's the food that's heter here. But the difference is that this scenario, and this actually, I appreciate what you're saying this, Simeon, because it's going to help me set up the following. You have here a situation where the oil has been set aside here for the purposes of being burned.
Yes.
And therefore, because it is now in that space, kind of like what the Rambam says, that there's a certain level of now muktzah on this, that it has been set aside for the purposes of being, burned. And so that does change. That does change the calculation here. That it's not just olive oil now. Now it has been set aside for the purposes of something that is prohibited to do on Shabbos. Obviously, if it's been set into motion before Shabbos, it's not a problem. But on Shabbos, now to take that oil and do something else with it is going to be an issue. That's going to rear its head in just a few minutes here in Mishnah Berurah.
Okay.
Okay. So we have here Sif Aleph. You are not allowed to place a perforated vessel that is filled with oil by the candle in order that it should drip into the candle. Gzeira, it's a decree. Shema yistapek mimenu. It's a rabbinic. Remember, this is all a rabbinic decree, right? Even if you say that the taking of the oil is a deoraisa, it's all a decree. The rabbis said. Why? Because perhaps you'll use it, right? My example, you'll take some of the olive oil and you'll put it into the salad. And you'll then be liable for the prohibition of extinguishing the fire. That's what he says here. If it's connected, it's one item, not just a dripping from one thing to another thing, but if it's all one unit. That's made of seed is lime or plaster, according to the Jastro. Charsit is some sort of potter's clay. It's the word cheres means earthenware. So you have some sort of potter's clay. It's clay. It's all one unit. Then it's mutter. Then it is permissible to have this setup where it is dripping the entire time. The cave. Why? Why is if it's one united vessel? Is it permissible? So he says here, the Kevon, since it's just all one vessel, Badil Mine, people remove themselves, they separate themselves from it, Mishum Isser Shabbos, because of the prohibition of Shabbos. Again, as I think I mentioned last week when we were reading the Aruch HaShulchan, that when you have this is where I light candles. This is my candle lighting set. That's very different than I have candles, and then I have this hack. That
a Rube Goldberg.
That's right, and now it's this is totally separate from this. Don't tell me this has to do with Shabbos. This is just my I'm really a clever whatever and what is it, inventor, and I came out with this cool thing. If it's one thing, that's my Shabbos. That's my Shabbos candles. Here, it's more likely that I may actually go ahead and take some of the oil away from this other contraption that is pouring oil or dripping oil into the nair.
There's a practical side here. There's a practical side here, which is that as a single unit, you are infinitely less likely to be fiddling with it and touching it in its prohibitive state.
Correct. 100%.
I think if it had a lever that allowed you to do that, then it'd be quite the opposite. But they didn't address that here. What were you going to say?
That's good. Go ahead.
Same thing in fewer words.
Okay, there you go. Okay, okay, good. So let's take a look here at yeah. Yeah, please read it. So Rich is just going to compare the words of the Mishnah to the Shulchan Aruch. Yeah. Right. Right.
So
here you're using an egg.
About having an eggshell.
Right. You poke a hole.
You poke a hole in the bottom of the eggshell.
Right.
You suspend it over
the nair, and it's continuously dripping.
You know how to do.
Correct.
Okay.
That's exactly something.
And even if Now, when it says people he shall cheres, what's cheres? The eggshell?
No, I think
No.
it's that's the nair, because we
The
talked about in previous year that a cheres nair, there is this the issue of it's maus. It sometimes can get very filthy and disgusting, and so you may have thought actually in that circumstance that actually, so the Aruch HaShulchan addressed this. He said that you may have thought that it would be mutter there. I'm trying to remember what he said. He said that you might think it's mutter, and kamashman it's not, because maybe it's maos, and so therefore you're not concerned that it's dripping all over the place. I don't know, because like if you, what does that do? You stop it from the shit. Keep going though. I forgot now.
Yes.
I'll be honest, I forgot. I can look it up on here.
So
Sorry, Kim, you're gonna lose the video for a
eggshell,
second. Yeah.
it talks about suspending the eggshell over the
Yeah.
lamp so that it can drip into the lamp.
Okay.
That's what we're doing right now.
Correct.
And it gives you an extra
Fine.
reservoir, so you can have an extra reservoir of oil, and they don't allow it.
Correct.
So I don't know what.
I thought it was in an earthenware vessel that you had on the table, right? So that it had used oil in it and you maybe put it in over time. And so it's most, you wouldn't want to touch it.
Right. Here
And you're not afraid you're going to take it to put on your salad.
So here's what he says. He says, so why are we still worried that you're going to take it, even though it's disgusting, maybe to the point of BJ is making? He says, nevertheless, you still, there's this fear that they're using the oil, right? That you're going to take the oil, even maybe I think actually maybe it's not the egg. I think maybe it's instead of the egg you have something that's cheres, and you're thinking, oh, there's this cheres thing, and I would never take oil out of the cheres thing. It's disgusting. It's filthy. No, but fili shel cheres. Even if that instead of an egg, it's a cheres, like earthenware. He says we're still worried. We're still worried that you would take. That's Aruch HaShulchan. That's why Aruch HaShulchan is my favorite Sparish. Okay.
And then Rabbi Yehuda is Matthew.
Yeah, Rabbi Yehuda is often not just in this context, but he's often the Bar Plukta.
If they were connected originally,
Right? Then mutter. Because the kliyach, exactly. That's what he said. But that's exactly the words of the Shulchan Aruch. The kevin shu kliyach. Right. It's coming on the next diff, exactly. So let's take a look at at Aleph and Beis here in the Mishnah Berurah. Mimenu, that there's a fear that you might take some of this oil, and as I keep saying, you'll use it in the salad. Aleph, the kevan shehu kli, the kli acher, it's in a different vessel. She'ein haner b'socho, and the nair is not there. That the wick and the oil in the wick is not part of that. It's not the lamp part exactly. Lo bodil minei, a person will not remove themselves or separate themselves from that. The kevan shehiktahu laner, and this is, do you remember from last week? This is the lashon of Rashi. And since you have set it aside, this oil to be for the nair, for the lamp, amistapek, if you then one person takes it, you use it, chayev mishum mechabe. He conflates, or maybe not conflates, but maybe he really combines the two issues of, since it's muktzah, therefore now when you take it away, you are violating mechabe because it was set aside to be used as the oil for this flame. Again, that was the lashon of Rashi for those who were keeping score at home. Okay, now fifth base, the chayev v'chulei, that you will violate the biblical prohibition of mechabe. Va'afilu lahaposkim shesovrim dal stam kibui ein bo chiyuv chatas rak isura be'alma. And even according to those poskim, which is how we, I believe, practically paskin, we'll see later in Hilchot Shabbat, who say that when you put out stam kibui, I put out the candle, or the candles are on, I blow it out. For whatever reason, I blow it out. I am not liable for a sin offering, meaning that the level of prohibition is not biblical. Rak isura ba'alma. Rather, it is just simply prohibited midirabanan. Right? It's like the famous rule in Hilchot Shabbat that when it says potter, you're studying Hilchot Shabbat, for the most part, when you see potter, it is potter of al-asr, right? That you are exempt from the korban, but it is still prohibited. So you have here a lower level of prohibition, and if you just blow out a candle, that is not a violation that would render a korban necessary. With the exception that if I blow out, that if I extinguish the flame, because I need the pecham, I need the coals, then it's biblical. Why? And he says, he just told about it, he sends it here, he says, you look later on in Hilchot Shabbos. He says, afilu. So okay, why? Why is this so? Why is this so? Why is it only in that case? Because every other time you blow out the candles, it's a malacha she'ena tzricha legufa. Malacha she'ena tzricha legufa means it's a malacha, but I do where I don't need the item on which I have performed the malacha. So, for example, the Gemara talks about, aside from this case, if I digging a hole, chofer guma is a problem on Shabbos. To dig a hole on Shabbos is an issue. Okay, now if I dig a hole, but I don't need the dirt, meaning I just dig the hole. I don't and I don't I dig the hole, but try to think here. And I say I don't need the dirt, so. Whatever the malacha was that I acted upon, right? Or better yet, actually, sorry, it's the other way around. I got it wrong. Let's say I dig a hole, but I want the dirt. I don't care about the hole here. The hole actually makes me upset because I have a hole in on my yard, but I needed a little bit of the dirt. So that's a malacha she'antzrich lagufa. It was a labor that I had did that I didn't need the actual product sort of my labor. So then it's not a deoraisa violation. It's only a dirabban. There is an opinion, Rabbi Yehuda, in the Gemara, who says that is still biblical, and the Rambam paskins like that opinion. But every other major posek paskins like Rabbi Shimon that a malacha she'ena tzricha legufa, where I don't, like this case where I blow out the candles. Now what do I have left? I have a candle without flame. Nothing emerged from that. But if I needed the pecham, the coals that were left over, and now I take the coals and I go and I use them for something else, if that is my machshava, right, then it is a biblical prohibition, because then it was a malacha, shetzricha legufa. I needed those coals, so I blew out the flame so I could take the coals and use it for something. But if I'm just putting out the flame, I didn't need anything that resulted from it. So I have a problem. Then it's only a rabbinic problem. So that's why he's saying here, even though here I'm blowing out I'm putting out the candles early by removing some of the oil. So even those poskim would still agree that it is prohibited. Meaning, yes, maybe we could argue the level, but it's still prohibited. Yes, sorry.
Mechaba is that its own malacha, or is it part of the hadlik?
Is mechabe, there is, of the 39 malachos, there's ma'avir and mechabe. Yeah, mechabe is putting it out. Correct.
Putting it out is a malacha.
I believe so. Yes, I think it's in the list of the 39 in the Mishnah and Klal Gadol. I believe so. I believe there's
reducing the fuel on Shabbos is mechabe.
Yes, certainly. Yes, if you remove, it's a relevant question. Let's say if you left something on, and even on Yom Tov, this is an issue, right? Let's say you leave a flame on. Can you adjust the flame downwards? It's not so clear that it's so easy. If you can adjust it downwards, if there's a purpose for it, meaning that I don't want my food to burn, but I want it to stay hot, so then I can adjust the flame down. But just to adjust it down for no reason is a problem. Because of mechaber, yeah. This is its own issue, is to reduce the flame or extinguish it altogether. But it's interesting here. So the last words of the Mishnah Berurah.
So then adjusting the flame on Yom Tov would seem to be a problem, because when you finish cooking, and you no longer have any issue, you don't have any desire to cook, then once you take the stuff off, you have to really adjust it before you take the stuff off, because if you take. the
Correct.
stuff
So you
off,
should just plan it out that you
lowering
want it,
lowering
you lower it beforehand so that it stays warm but doesn't burn, right? And then because as long as it's for the purposes of the food, you could do that adjustment on Yom Tov. But then once you take it off, there is really nothing that allows you to adjust the flame at that point.
I'm sorry, Rav.
You could adjust it downward.
1 second, Sammy.
You could adjust
You
it
could-
downward in the course of cooking.
Correct, if it's for
So
the
you don't
purposes
burn
of the
the
cooking, correct. But once you take the
Just
food
shut it
off,
totally, you know.
no, shutting it off completely, you can't. You can't do that. No.
That's what I'm.
That's mechaba. Sorry, Sammy, what did you want to ask?
It seems to me, Rav, respectfully, that not being able to touch the cooking after the eating on Yom Tov is a needless chumrah. Maseches Beitza says, "Mitok shehutra letzorech ochel nefesh, hutra nami shalom mitzorech." So I can do that. Why can't I do that?
I'm sorry, so what, I can't do what again? So the beginning part of the video?
Mitoch shehutra letzorech ochel nefesh, hutra nami shalom mitzorech.
Right, but there has to be, but that's shalom letzorech ochel nefesh, meaning I can adjust if I'm cold in the house or I'm too hot in the house, I can adjust the flame. It's not for ochel nefesh, that's for comfort, for heat. But just the rabbis had a rule that because once I'm allowed to adjust fires and flames for food, I can adjust them for other things, but I can't adjust them for no good reason, sort of. There has to be a personal benefit. So if I am very hot in my house and I want to reduce the heat, so I turn the flame down a little bit, that's one thing. There's a benefit that's done. I can't just stop, shut it off because I want to save on the bill or because I want to say there has to be
That's a personal benefit.
I knew I was going to say that.
Come on.
Why you want to have a clean house? You want to put the stuff away. Rabbi Klinger and his family are coming over to visit. I want to clean the house. I don't want to look like we just finished to eat 2 minutes ago. How do you?
That's a separate issue. That doesn't involve the flame. I mean, the right in terms of the putting things out, the fire out. That's going to have to be. There's going to have to be a clear need that is identified where the adjustment actually makes a difference to, in one case, either food or to my own personal. I'm too hot, I'm too cold, one of those considerations. Okay, let's just read the last part of that Mishnah Berurah here. Yeah. Yes.
You're just waiting for it.
Okay, let it burn out.
Let it burn
Let it burn out. Let it burn out. That's and then it's mutter, delicious. Yeah. No.
But you have this contraption where you have a vessel, secondary vessel.
Yeah.
That's somehow dripping into your primary vessel.
Yes.
Are you allowed to put more oil into that secondary vessel? No, you can't take the oil out. You put more oil in it.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't think so. Because what you're doing, you are giving this, because it's now Shabbos, what you've done is you've set into motion on Shabbos a mechanism by which the flame is now going to last longer.
Why would it be different than adding wood to a real fire?
Exactly.
Right. Well, you might say that because that here it'll catch fire immediately, right? My action immediately results in a new flame. His example is the continuation of a flame.
No, I understand that, but I think it's the same thing here, because let's say if it's coals, which would have been more likely, right? As opposed to wood. I mean, once you're adding it, doesn't catch immediately.
Right.
It doesn't happen. And
Right.
believe me, I know, because I
That's
smoke
why
in
you-
an old fashioned
No, that's why
smoker.
you need-
It doesn't catch immediately, right?
Right.
You put it in there so that it'll continue the flame that's already
Right.
there. So it's no different. Bruce's question is appropriate. I mean, I think that adding to the egg shell is probably in that same
Yeah.
category.
I would
think it's. I don't think there's a difference.
Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't sound right.
it doesn't sound right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the eggshell won't be problematic even anyways because if let's say it's even kli echad, right, where we have a heter, there I think it's still an issue because you are extending the life of this flame.
You know, I
Same
don't-
thing though with the fire. I mean, when you're throwing the log in the fire or adding coals. to
You're
the fire,
extending
right?
the-
You're extending it, and it's for a personal use too. I mean, right, one is to
Putting
keep
more
warm and
oil
one
in the
is,
reservoir.
Right.
Simchat Shabbat or.
Right.
You know, I
Oded
don't know
Shabbat,
how they work, but I think like in the Middle East, they had those brass lamps that actually were meant to run on Shabbos for long periods of time. Like somehow they were feeding the oil through, but
Right.
not dripping it. It
Right.
had some sort of reservoir that was
Right.
internal, it was made out of brass.
Right.
But they were meant to last like almost all of Shabbos.
Right.
They weren't adding to it.
But
No,
and
no,
that's
no.
and
I'm
that's
just saying
and
that
that's
somehow.
that's
Right.
kli echad, right?
Yeah.
That's why it's okay.
Get it out.
Yeah.
We had to tilt it to get it out.
Right. Okay, so the last part of that Mishnah Berurah, he just said
Fire to me.
that it's all one thing.
That I could add, yes, if it's all one thing, that I should be able to add to it.
No, it's automatic as they had.
No, but I'm talking about in a fire. I mean, you say you have a fireplace or a wood burning stove, right, to keep warm. You can throw wood into that, right?
Shabbos, no.
Yeah.
Oh, a wood burning fireplace, you can, why?
I don't know, can't you add?
On Shabbos to add to full, no,
Well,
no, no,
I
I
mean,
think,
if you have a place where it's cold, but what do you think Ashkenazim did in these cold countries all
Don't
this
talk
time?
about Ashkenaz.
No, they do. Well, we were in the Middle East. It was
No,
a
so
lot
that- so
warmer.
that- so
No,
that
but
was-
look at-
so that's
That's
the,
why we don't have cholent.
so,
No one wanted to keep the stove.
so that was why the,
No, that was Hameen, and they're the only guys that did it.
That's the way.
I'll just say one thing on the adding the wood. So that's not, so that it's very clear actually that the Shulchan Aruch, we talked this probably a year ago at this point, where that's a problem because you're especially with wood, right? The fire, it catches, it burns bigger,
Right,
when
you got it
that
both
happens.
ways.
Right, so there it's a big problem to add it. It's even a problem Erev Shabbos if the fire is not. We talked about this as a gezerah that if it's going into Shabbos and it's not yet fully independent and it needs perhaps some human oversight, then you would need to put that out right before Shabbos starts because that kind of a situation is no good because it's going to lead to that's the fear that the rabbis had that you're going to 5 minutes into Shabbos you're going to be distressed over the fact that the flame is not working and you might
So what did we do?
make a
What
boo-boo.
did we do in the cold climate?
So the Ramah talks about that they would actually ask a non-Jew, that was very common because it was in the middle of the winter. So it's a Amir al-Nachar that they allowed because it was sakana, because they felt otherwise people would be very cold, and so, but they had, and they also how do they handle it? Do you remember they had that oven? Remember they had they have the non-Jew light and that was a question. Oh, can I now have some food in the oven when they light it? So that was the second question. Like once I went there lighting this oven and heat the house up, can there be a little bit of food on top of it? But the point is that they did have there was a very common custom. It seems that they asked their non-Jewish neighbors to turn on. They had the Shabbos goy. The Shabbos goy came, and the reason that was allowed, they usually not allowed to just ask a non-Jew to do something like that, was because mishum. He says mishum hakol chole eitzel atzina, that we're all considered sick when it gets too cold. So.
Seriously, no.
Rav, isn't it so that based on Amira Li'akum, which is a specific prohibition, the entire notion of the Shabbos goy falls afoul? It's
Shabbos goy. You will hear from me over and over as we learn more Hilchot Shabbos. The idea of a sort of a straight up Shabbos goy is very problematic. You cannot just ask an Andrew to do something you cannot do. There has to be some mitigating circumstance, something else you have going for you. You cannot, the time that it's going to be allowed is in a Shavuos, the Shavuos b'makom mitzvah. You have to be talking about a rabbinic prohibition that you're asking a non-Jew to do, and then there has to be a good reason. There has to be some mitzvah involved. There has to be a tzorach gadol involved. in order to get a non-Jew involved. To just call them over and say, turn this light off, turn that light on, that is not so simple and straightforward. As I've mentioned a number of times, we didn't get there yet in the learning. But when it comes to a tzorech rabim, for example, the situation given is that the Eruv wire falls down. Now everybody is nest over because nobody can carry, but now you can't even get word to 3/4 of the people that they can't carry right now. So there you are allowed to then ask, someone on the custodial staff here at the Young Israel Scars, they'll say, can you put this one up? There, you don't need a double derabanan, you just need, even a shmuz. One thing here, asking them the non-Jew to do something, and by the way, fixing Erev is the oraisa. You're talking about tikkun mana. This is right, and this is where the heter comes for when there is an issue that happens in the shul. How often in the shul? Honestly, the shul we should fix this. I don't know why it happens. I'm not the expert. How often the lights go out in the main shul?
It's been like that since they
looked at it.
Right, the lights, they go out suddenly like 3.
They can't fix it.
And
they can't fix it. You can't.
There's nothing to do.
And they've tried.
There's nothing to do. Right. So there, what happens? The lights
rewire the whole place.
Mamish, the lights go out on a Friday night. No one can read the siddur, right? And so what happens? In swoops, someone from our custodial staff, and they flip the lights back on.
Yeah,
and that's because of a tzorech rabim. When there's a mitzvah that's a mitzvah to rabim, there's even more of a head there. But generally speaking, to Simeon's point, and what people have been saying around the table, the idea, the concept of a Shabbos goy is really not so simple the way
in that situation. It's my understanding. We never asked them to do that.
They do it on their own.
They do it on their own.
Yes, but even
their own benefit. They
but when it comes to light, when it comes to light, though, it's even when a non-Jew does it without asking you, it's like we're going to get to all these things as we go further into Hilchot Shabbat.
We had the same thing in the old days when they used to vacuum here after Kiddush
on Shabbos, right? So there's a simon here that's coming up about maybe it's a little bit further along here, but there's a simon that's about this topic about particularly the non-Jew turning on lights for you on Shabbos. Very, very complicated. Not so easy that it's allowed, even if you don't say a word. Okay, so the last part of this Mishnah Berurah, the last few words here. The end of Sif Katan Beis, that even though that there maybe it's only a Durabanan at play here, because it's not, I don't need the pecham, right? When I take the oil out, I'm just going to please it on my salad. I don't need the flame extinguished for the coal that's left over. Even though it's only a Durabanan, the rabbis included this as part of the Gzeira. And if you want a full treatment on why is it not a Gzeira, you'll look at number 3, by the way, over here. It's very small. He basically says, he quotes from the Machatzis HaShekel, the commentary, who says that because the prohibition of Mechabe is Kal Be'enei Hanoshim, it's very, I just put it out, no big deal. So therefore, it's not and this seems so, whatever. It's very light in people's eyes. Therefore, it's even though it seems like it's Gzeira, that's why they still made this decree. I don't know if it makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside that was a good reason, but okay, it is what it is. Let's take a look here at Sif Beis now in the Shulchan Aruch. Let's keep moving. This is that second part of that Mishnah that Richie was quoting for us before from Bava Madlikin. Lo yimale adam ke'ara shemen. So you're not allowed to fill up a ka'ara, a bowl, with oil. V'tinena b'tzad haner, and then you'll place it next to the bowl that has the ner in it. So you have a ner, and right next to it I have a bowl of oil. So there's obviously oil in this one too. And then what am I going to do? I'm very clever. I'm such a genius. So what did I do? V'yitein rosh hapsila b'socha. I take the one end of the wick and I extend it from where the ner is, and I extend it out into the other bowl right next to it that has the oil. Bishvil shetei of it, so that it will draw forth from the oil over here. So I have a bowl of oil over here with a wick. That'll last a certain amount of hours, but I'm a smart guy and I want it to last much longer. So I take another piece of the wick and I extend it into the bowl right next to it. So now I've made my flame last longer. So why am I not allowed to do this even from before Shabbos?
Same week, or additional.
It's one long wick.
One long wick. Imagine that you have a big long wick. It goes down. It's up here. It goes down into the oil. Comes back out into the next bowl right next to it with the oil,
And it draws.
and
so
it's
that-
drawing
It's
exactly
drawing, so the flame is theoretically at one end.
correct. Yes,
They're creative.
very creative. So you have here. So you imagine here. Let me put this to the side. You imagine you have two bowls. I'm just gonna keep it simple. Here I have a wick, and I have oil, and I take my match and I light it. Okay, now this is on. Okay, I take the bottom end of this wick, and now I run that wick into the other bowl, which is full of oil, and now I have made a double. The flame will last twice as long.
Small.
Right. I want it to last till 2 a.m. I don't have a clear that can last till 2 a.m. So I double up. So I'm not allowed to do this. Why? Why can't I not set this up before Shabbos? I'm not going to do it on Shabbos. Before Shabbos, I'll set it up. Why not? Because again, I might take from the second bowl. I'll say, okay, it's not yet truly drawing forth from here. And I'm gonna siphon off. The flame isn't gonna care. It doesn't have nothing. The size of the flame isn't going to adjust when I take a little bit of the oil over here. So therefore, it's similar to Sif Aleph, and that's why it's in the same Mishnah that Richie was quoting. It's the same Mishnah because it's the same principle at play. Take a look at Sif Katan Gimel, Rosh Hapsila. He just describes now what I just said. Rotze Lomar, Katzeh Hasheni, the second side we have Psila from the wick, She'eno Dolek, which is not burning. Yitain behaka'ara l'shov hashemen. I run that into the other bowl in order to draw forth more oil. L'salka daita chamina, and I would have thought maybe kevan japsila munachas v'gam bekara, since maybe the wick is in both bowls. Therefore, yabadil mina. Maybe you know what? I see it as one because in the first case I had the egg that was dripping, drip, drip, drip. That's totally disconnected. It's
Right.
drip, 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 drip. Here, it's a separate bowl, but the wick is actually shared. So I might have thought the rabbis would have said, no, nobody will ever make that mistake. And the rabbi said, no, people will make that mistake. So they made a gzeira, and they can't do that. But that was the havamina kamash malan. The rabbis teach us. We learn from this that even on this case they made a decree. They decreed upon us. Sif katan dalid mimenu. You might use some of this. The gambaza im chibra b'siva uv'ovachar sit mutar. Now, if this is one contraption, right, not just a bowl next to a bowl, but it's I went to the Judaica store and they sold it like this. They mamish, it was one thing. When I move this one, it comes with it. Like that one thing is that's where I light candles. I don't touch where I light candles. There's an extra contraption that kind of then it's a problem. So it's not stated, but Mishnah were just pointing out the obvious that if there's one item, if in Sif Aleph it was mutter, then Sif Beis it should be mutter as well.
But
Okay.
obviously, Rob, this has to be done miba'od yom.
Oh, for sure. Yes, that's clear. It has to be done Friday before Shabbos begins.
Well,
Correct.
with one contraption, you can't separate it. It's made as one utensil.
That's
It
correct.
has a second reservoir
Meaning
in it.
you separate yourself from it though. That's the thing. But I could still siphon off the oil.
Yeah, you could take a teaspoon and
Yeah.
take some
Correct.
of the oil out.
And it
right?
won't affect the flame. The rabbis are more thinking about me. Will I not touch this because I'll be like, oh, it's one contraption, therefore this is my Shabbos candles. I don't touch my where I light candles, if it's one thing, I don't get involved.
Come from, what actually happened.
Yeah, you presume that
You
they
can see a second bowl, which is not attached to the lamp,
right.
and it's full of oil, and my salad is dry.
Right. So okay, I'll take my teaspoon and I'll
Because it looks like a separate bowl. But if it's one
unit, it's
one unit with a second reservoir in it, you can see that it's part of the lamp.
correct. And therefore,
You don't
therefore
Also
I'm
explain
separating
it.
myself. I'm removing myself. I'm not going to touch this. I wouldn't make that mistake. No Jew makes that mistake.
The rabbi said nobody made that mistake. You didn't have to make a gazera on that.
On that, exactly. Good. Sif Gimel. Back up on top. Einos kli b'Shabbos tachas haner lekabel shemen hanotef mipnei shehu mevatel kli mehecheno. He says though, umoter litno b'ba'od yom v'hashemen notef v'hashemen hanotef also lihistabik menu b'Shabbos. Now we're shifting gears a little bit. Obviously, it's related to oil and dripping. But he says here, you're not allowed to place a vessel on Shabbos. Now, this part's happening on Shabbos. Okay, tachas haner, underneath the ner. Why am I concerned about this? We in our candelabras and our candlesticks today. I don't know how many of us think about, it's going to drip, it's going to this, it's going to that. But perhaps you have a situation here, maybe even in Sif Aleph, where you have this dripping, but it's one item, so it's mutter, right? So it's dripping. But sometimes things drip and they splash and they don't hit exactly. When we construct items today, everything is measured perfectly, so nothing would ever happen like this. But let's say I place underneath, and by the way, maybe I'm not even talking about oil here. You could be even talking about a wax candle, and we know even from our own life how sometimes a wax candle can go off the rails, and the thing is dripping, and what a mess. And I don't know what your Chanukiah looks like at the end of Hanukkah, but the ones we use that are wax, I hope there's a Chanukiah under there. It's just the wax is all over it. And so you have here, you put a kli underneath the ner. The ner can be made of anything. And you want it to l'kabel shemen hanote, the oil that's dripping off. Why am I not allowed to do this? What do you on Shabbat? Why? I'm just collecting it. I don't want the tablecloth is going to get dirty, or the thing is going to get. I put a little kli there.
Something may happen to the flame when you manipulate the thing. It may go out and may get stronger.
So
that's the whole thing. Plus, you have the whole Muksa issue.
Okay, that's going to play into this. What you're mentioning, Bruce, they're not taking that into consideration. If that were to happen, for sure it's a problem. If I'm shaking the candle and the flame is going up and down and up and down, that's for sure a problem. Let's assume I don't have to touch the nair. That it's such a way that if I angle it over, it's like
let's say you have a candelabrum like this, and you just want to stick it underneath that.
Correct. It's hanging. Exactly, it's hanging. Right. We don't think about candles hanging.
Wow.
For them, their candles may have been hanging, or you have a tricky candle where it's angled over here, and you see it's dripping now on the table. So, and I'm just going to put a plate here. Nothing crazy. I'm going to put a plate. It'll catch the oil. So you're not allowed to do this. Why? Because I am nullifying a vessel from its preparation, from how it was prepared. Now, what does this mean? Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. He will give us an explanation. Sif katan hey lekabel shemen. This is catching the oil. Aval mutar. Now he does say though. Aval mutar laseis tachas ner shel shaba o shel chelev. Here it says that it's permissible. That only if it's oil is a problem. He says here, if it's shel shaba, it's wax or it's fat, animal fats, then you can put a vessel underneath to catch. Because the fear was that perhaps you will lest it fall and it will light that which is underneath it, meaning that there is a fire safety issue here, from what I'm seeing. Right, with the wax, there's more of a maybe the wax falls and the wick goes with it, and it's not so stable, not such a great. Remember, because we're not talking about necessarily that the wick is down. We have to change our mindset. When we think of a wax candle, we think that the wick is all the way down inside, which is mutter. Then you can let. But let's say you have a candle where and it's not constructed the way they are today, and the fear is that this thing is tilting. You see it, you're like, okay, I'm going to put the bowl underneath it so that it doesn't fall over, and this is going to catch on fire. So that I'm allowed to with a wax situation. Umaniach sham kli sheyipol ala kli. Umaniach sham kli sheyipol ala kli. So then I'll put the vessel there so that it falls on the vessel. Umitam the kevan the efshar linaer miyad ha'isur mitocha. Sorry, the kevan the efshar linaer miyad ha'isur mitocha kli. K'moshe kasav siman reish ayin zayin lo chashi mivatel kli mehechenu. And then, since I am able to shake off immediately the isser here, so the wax falls, and before I guess it's already. I'm not sure. I would think the wax would be hard to shake off. I don't understand exactly that part. So when the wax, it falls, is it already hardened? Usually when wax initially falls, it's liquidy, and then that's why it sticks to the and it's hard to clean off. He's describing here a situation where I could shake this off very easily right away. And therefore it's not being mevatel. Now I can't use this plate. If in theory the wax, which I would think what would happen, sticks to the plate, now my plate I can't use my plate anymore today. This was supposed to be a plate that I use on Shabbos, and that's mevatel kli mehecheno, and I'm nullifying its usage. And he says, and let's just finish this, and then we'll try to understand the wax. I'm just describing what he's saying here. V'lo dami l'shemen. It's not like the oil. She'ena rotze l'na'aro u'lahafsido. Because what happens with the oil? I don't actually want to get rid of it. Not bad. The oil dripped on it. Perfect. Now I have some oil, and now I don't actually the wax, dripped wax. I have no usage for it anymore. Once it's dripped, it's garbage. So, but with oil, it spilled over or something like that, or it dripped and it missed. So then I actually don't want to shake it off and to just get rid of it. Ulahamid kli tachas apecham sheberosh hapsila sheipol lesocho. Sorry, let's pause there. So let's understand this first case. Why is it the oil that falls? I'm not allowed to do that, but the wax that falls, I am allowed to do that. And I think the reason you see here is that because I can still use this oil, and I have a kli underneath it, right? And what happened before Shabbos? This was a kli that I wanted to use for, I don't know, serving, setting the table, anything. So let's back up. On Shabbos, even oil that falls in. So if oil falls onto this thing, now I don't want to get rid of the oil. I'm actually going to keep it. The oil is very precious to me. It's worth something. I can use it later, whether for fire, whether for cooking, so now I have this thing. But the oil is also muktzah, right? It was set aside. So now I can't use this perfectly good plate. And the rabbis had a rule that you're not ein mevatel kli mehecheno. If you have something I planned on using on Shabbos for heter purposes that are mutter, serving dishes, food, whatever it might be that it's mutter. Now what happened? I have a dish that I have something that is mutter, and now I can never use it again on Shabbos for the purposes that I.
Becomes muktzah.
Correct.
It becomes muktzah because you didn't intend it for that.
Exactly.
No, it does not become muktzah. There's no such thing as springing muktzah.
Meaning the plate can't become muktzah. But correct, because muktzah is determined bein hashmashos during that twilight period.
No, but if you.
But now the plate is practically unused, is not usable.
If you intended for different use before Shabbos.
What, the oil or the plate?
You intend the plate to set the table or to.
Right. It was my fine
use.
china, right? And then I was for some reason
now for that use, it's not muktzah, but if now it's become a collector of extra oil.
So, right.
That wasn't in its intended use. So now
When Shabbos came in. No, it's not muktzah. It's just that you've now been mevatel the kli from being used for the rest of Shabbos. This was my china plate that I want for whatever reason.
So what triggers muktzah?
Muktzah is triggered in the following way. If something is prohibited bein hashmashos, in the twilight period of Shabbos, for the rest of Shabbos, it has the status of being set aside. Bein l'tov, bein l'ra. For example, if you have a rock in the backyard that you had your eye on Friday, this is the most beautiful rock. It's a pet rock. I want it as a pet rock. And before Shabbos, I go over to the rock and I say, rock, my kid's going to play with you on Shabbos. And I don't even touch it. I leave it outside. So as long as when that Shabbos comes in there in that bein hashmashos period, it's now set aside as being mutter. On Shabbos, I can use it. Vice versa. That rock was usher. I never designated it to be used on Shabbos.
Well, it's a
and
high
then
degree of muktzah. So is the rock.
rock is also higher degree of muktzah, and I can use a lower degree, right? So you have. I'm trying to think here now. What's an example of muktzah machmat chesron kisar machmat muktzah mius? But you have something that's bein hashmashos. Let's use an example of. Here's an example, right? When you have as a basis of davar ha'asr, related a little bit to what we're talking about. Let's say you have something that holds up the nair. So you have the wick and the oil, and then there's a kli that it's in, a little candle holder, whatever you want to call it. The candle will burn out, everything, all the contents will burn out by 10 p.m. Can I use this thing, tomorrow during the lunch meal? Absolutely. For some other reason, the answer is no, because a basis davar ha'asr is asr. And since during the twilight period that flame was on, and this is the holder, that is now prohibited the rest of Shabbos. What's happening here is that you have
Richie, the reason it can't be books at that plate, right, is because the only things that are muktzah are things that have no Shabbat purpose, right, going into Shabbat. That's the basic.
Sticks and stones and dirt.
Right, they have no Shabbos purpose. That plate had a Shabbos purpose. It's going into Shabbat. So once Shabbat occurs, it's not it can't be muktzah anymore. There's a different reason for prohibiting. It's just not
No,
muktzah.
but so if you're mevatel the use that you intended for it.
But it doesn't become muktzah because it had a use.
So he's going to explain, by the way, in a moment in Sivkat on Vav, this mevatel kli mehecheno.
Put aside a because you want to open walnuts.
Right.
You don't have to put it
You
aside.
actually, yeah.
But you say, I'm going to use the hammer, I'm going to use for the walnuts.
Okay.
So now the hammer is not muktzah to the walnut. Now,
But
somebody
the
takes a
hammer, so this is something we're going to, as we get deeper into Hilchot Shabbos, this is when I was learning, Hilchot Shabbos, my very first time learning Hilchot Shabbos. This was the part where I go, I want my money back from day schools because this is something they should have taught me, So a hammer, which is not actually muktzah. A hammer is called a klisha malachto le'ism. It's a vessel that's used for prohibited things, such as knocking a nail into the wall. That is not allowed, or building, bonet. But if I want to take the nail, that I don't know what you call that end of the nail, with the hook, like the two prong, what? The claw. And you have a terrible itch right here. You could take that hammer, no matter what you did, and go. That is completely mutter. And for the same reason, if I'm allowed for food purposes to smash open I'm allowed to use it. Now, I'm not allowed to take that if I find that very same hammer and I see it, I left it outside and it's going to pour today. I'm not allowed to move it. Because a klisha mechama itself, I was telling you, saying to Simeon earlier, to just protect it from its own, for damage that it may incur, I'm not allowed to do that. But if I have a need for it, that's mutter, I'm actually allowed to pick it up and do it. And that's why I said this to students, by the way. They're always, I tell my 8th grade students as we went on Shabbos. And I say, you could take a pen, make sure the cap is closed. Take a pen on Shabbos. If you have an itch right over here, take the pen and go, mutter. There's no problem. It's a klisha malachta lister, l'tzorach gufo. If you want to use it as a back scratcher, again, close it so you don't write on yourself because that's usher. But then that is permissible. So that's why.
Yeah, that's a great example.
And the kids all go, "What? You could touch the pen? Yeah, you can touch the pen. It's fine. If you have a back scratcher, don't make everyone crazy. Use the back scratcher, but you could use the pen. Yes.
If you have a bowl.
Yeah.
But you ought to use it on Shabbos because you're going to use it for salad, okay? But you take that same bowl, you put it under the lamp.
Okay, it's catching the oil,
to
right?
Catch the
dripping oil, yeah. So no, the answer is not. It's not categorized as muktzah. It's actually this category of
Yes.
Mevatel. No. And I understand where Richie's coming from because that's
You've nullified it.
correct. You've nullified his use, but muktzah can never start in the middle. Also muktzah can never start in the middle of Shabbos. Either muktzah before when Shabbos comes in, or it's not muktzah before Shabbos comes in. But what you've done here is it's a different category. It's called mevatel kli mehecheno. He's going to explain in Sivav. He's going to explain how this functions.
But the oil going into
So
it.
mevatel kli.
The oil going into it is the oil you can't use. The oil that's on top of which now. Well, a bus can only be created going. What was that? It's a related. It's a related concept. I'll say, but it's not muktzah. Muktzah means it's something that was set aside from the mind at the beginning of Shabbos, or it was set aside for not being set aside. Like to be mutter, something like sticks or stones or dirt. Right, the Gemara talks about that you pile up dirt in one corner of your house because their floors used to be dirt, and you're like, that dirt, I'm going to be using it on Shabbos. I don't know, maybe that kid wants to play, indoor sandbox.
I'm just trying
right?
to know what the issue is of this.
It's a rabbinic nature of being mevatel, of nullifying perfectly good dishes that were going to be used on Shabbos, or it can be used on Shabbos for your meal, for whatever other things, and now you've basically rendered it unusable. It's a rabbinic category. He's going to explain it in just a moment here.
One of the best hakdot that the Mishnah Berurah has is what he writes in advance of the discussion of muktzah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you go through it from beginning to end. You'll see it just it gives you real clarity on it, and then you spend a long time, having your mind go back and forth. But it's really incredibly clear.
Yes.
Which would answer your question.
Yeah.
No, but it would seem like the oil is sort of understandable based on what's been said about it. It was designated before Shabbos, and for that use, and now it's stripped into thing, and you can't use it for salad dressing again or the other thing.
Right.
But on the other hand,
What if you flip your salad?
no, but on the other hand, the wax, let's say, wax, that
Yeah.
you say is not usable again. You could say, suppose you use your only soup bowl for what happens to Oneg Shabbos. You're allowed to, if you think things are dirty, you're allowed to sort of clean off a little to if it's disgusting to you, it makes your Shabbos disgusting. You're allowed to do some cleaning, like sweep the floor.
So there may be mitigating circumstances where we might be able to find a heter, but let's get the rules down here, man. Then we can start to play with. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe 10.
Yeah. Shall we read it right now?
Yeah, read it.
Okay.
Read it.
Okay. So let's skip to Vav. Skip to Vav for a second. Okay. All right. So the word muktzah is there. That's why he's. Okay.
Are you upstairs or downstairs?
Downstairs. Sifkat on Vav. Okay. And then we got to go back to Sifkat on Dalid. Hey, afterwards. We need to finish that. But let's jump ahead. That way we'll get the understanding of this whole situation.
Yeah.
It was from the beginning permissible. It was sort of prepared to be moved around on Shabbos. It's mitaltala. I'm going to carry it over here. It's fine. Right? Exactly. And now it's prohibited to move because of the oil that's in it. And he says here, the oil is muktzah. The oil is muktzah because it was set aside for a prohibited function, namely being lit in a fire. So this muktzah thing has fallen. I believe it's talking about the oil.
Clearly, he's talking.
What's the tiltul?
No, Shehu tells you.
No, the tiltul is on the bowl. Now I can't carry the bowl now because of the oil that's inside of it, though. The oil is the muktzah, right? Right, the oil is the muktzah. That's the
grammar.
Right. Kamosha Kosta b'simin reish ayin tes. Right, reish ayin tes is the simin about moving dine tiltul haner b'Shabbos. Right, that's that simin. And he says here, the chachamim osur levat. Here's the decree. So this is probably, it will help put to bed some of the discussion we're having. It's a rabbinic rule. The rabbi said if you have a nice your dish that you plan on using for your meal or this, exactly good. He says here what happens. The rabbis didn't want you to do this because now you've rendered it unusable. It's like you broke it. Like, if things break on Shabbos. They break on Shabbos. Somebody drops a plate. What are you supposed to do? It's broken. Like, you can't make a rule against breaking your plate by accident. Because it's by accident.
No.
The shards, you mean?
Yeah.
The shards, they are not. No, they're not muktzah. No, you can. And in fact, your dafka should clean them up because of the danger that's presented. You're absolutely allowed to sweep them up. You
don't want to accept this, that there's no such thing as.
But he says here, the oil. Meaning the oil
beforehand.
The oil within it.
Shehu, the who is the shemen. The shehu muktzah machmas ha'isur.
That's the whole point.
The kli is muktzah.
No.
Oil that's in it.
No.
I believe that the who here is talking about the oil. The oil, which is a chiddush by the way, because oil can also be used to dress your salad. but because I placed it in before Shabbos, and then
That was what the
you know,
Rambam was talking about.
and that's what,
In
and if you remember,
previous
Richie,
case.
even when you had the egg, and this is a bit usually about to say this, right? The egg that was dripping, remember? And I'm not allowed to take some of that. Now, the Rambam thought it was not an issue of kiboy. The way he explained that Mishnah that you read to us earlier was not kiboy, like the way the Shulchan Aruch cites, because that's really the Rosh's opinion. He said it was a muktzah issue. Why? Well, I didn't touch the oil's not on fire yet, or touching the wick yet, because I set it aside to be burned. Now, as Shabbos enters, I can't use it. Rambam says because that oil is now muktzah. The oil has been set aside. So that I think here we're talking about shehu. Shehu means the oil is set aside for purposes of prohibited purposes because it was actually supposed to be burnt. So here we have now the reason given the chacham is not actually breaking it, but it's dome keilu soster akli. I am umishabra. It's like I have soter is like to take apart. I'm taking apart this kli and I'm breaking it. Now here's the thing. Here's the catch, right? Let's say in this kli there is a davar hamutar. There is something permissible, and then the oil. Well, let's put distinguishable parts here because then the salad is perhaps an issue. Let's make distinguishable parts. Let's actually make it easy. I have one of those double dishes. You have two sides that my mom always likes to use this when she's serving guests. On one side you have the potatoes. On the same dish, there's the other side that has the rice. And you bring one bowl, and so now it's a connected thing. And in one part there are potatoes, and in the other part there's nothing. And so I put the thing there, and it drips to the empty part. But it's one kli. You can't distinguish that there's two kalim here. So then he says, if I have a davar hamutar there, then go ahead, catch the shemen in the other compartment. Because then it becomes the classic case of I have something that is mutar and something that is osir underneath something else. If it's just something osir there, can I pick up the thing? Not so clear because really what I'm doing is I'm moving the osir thing. But if it's a davar hamutar and a davar ha'asur, then I can. These are all rules made by the rabbis. Then I'm allowed to move this thing underneath because I have right here. In this case, it's the dish because I can move the potatoes. Potatoes are mutar, delicious on Shabbos, and I have the oil here that was set aside for Easter. So I am carrying a davar ha'asur ve'hamutar, and that I'm allowed to carry because of the mutar thing that's there, and because I'll say, that's my primary reason for moving it. So therefore. Then it's a different calculation.
I don't get that, Rav. We learned davar habasis ledavar ha'isur ha'asur is asur itself. We learned that.
But if you have to use a little bit of the terminology used, so I'm careful not to necessarily call this a basis davar asur. But let's say you have even if you had a case of basis ledavar ha'asur ve'hamutar, it is then permissible to move the buses. Meaning, if let's say you have the candlestick, a thing underneath it, putting aside the issue of buses to buses, okay, the two levels. Let's leave that issue aside.
Money on one side,
right?
And you had cottage.
There you go. There you go. Let's say you have coins. Let's say you have coins. You have a tray, and in the tray are coins and potatoes. Okay, and they're cooked potatoes, not even raw potatoes. And first, you tell your children putting coins in the dish where there are potatoes is a bad idea. And then afterwards, you're like, okay, now what do I do? So it's never happened that kids put anything that was. But let's say now, what do I do next? Now, I need to make sure that when we. Back up. This is not called a basis davar asur. Even if, let's say, I knew that my kids did it before Shabbos and I forgot to move it. It's not a basis. Why? Because it's a basis davar ha'asur ve'hamutar. The potatoes are mutar. And the rule, when we learn basis davar ha'asur, when we get there, we're actually not far. I just realized that we're actually not far. The dinim of tiltul haner are, I don't know, we're a few months away. But we'll get there. But it's coming up. And there, when you have mutar and asur on top, you can't move the basis. So even if though I wouldn't be careful to call this a basis because this is happening on Shabbos, the same principle generally applies, and therefore I'm allowed to move this because it is permissible. there's another. This is a little. Whatever. I'm not going to go there. There's a kind of horrible case in the Gemara about what happens when somebody passes away on Shabbos, and you learn this, and it's not so simple to say that you can move a deceased body. And what can you do to make it permissible? The tino goes kikar or tino. It's really, by the way, I always like when we learn this in Shir, I was like, they're gonna put a baby in this situation. All right, let's say, but okay, but by putting a loaf of bread on top, you've now at least made this permissible. So when you're carrying things that are mutter and usher together, there is more room for leniency, and that's the extreme case of leniency. Where you literally you put something into the situation that permits it. Now, anyway, so he says here. And then we gotta stop, I think. So you're allowed to move this agava heter because there's something heter mutter there. I'm allowed to move it. Assuming that I'm allowed to carry it for its own purposes. Let's say that davar mutter, bishvilo, being for it. There has to be a reason I'm moving it for the heter reason. I can't just move it meaning if I'm moving this thing, there has to be a reason for the davar hamuter to move, right?
That's supported by the potatoes.
Right. If the potatoes are there and I need to move them, so because I want my guests to eat them, then yes, I can move it. Now I still can't use the oil though. I still can't use the oil. Correct. I know the potatoes here. I know that I'm going to serve the potatoes later on because of my guests, and I capture the oil by Richie. I capture the oil, and it's a davar. It's a cleat. It's a workaround, but I'm not making why because it's not a technical violation of mevatel kli mehecheno because I have not. I'm still using it for mutter purposes.
We almost had this situation come up. We've been invited out, friends, nearby for Shabbos dinner Friday night, and they had the Neoranim, and in a very nice candelabra and stuff. But we're sitting there eating. All of a sudden, one of them exploded.
Yeah.
That happened once.
Right? Did that ever happen to you?
It didn't happen to me, but there was someone who was actually Elisa's aunt and uncle. They had a candle.
Huh?
If you didn't take out, you're reusing it. And the little.
You didn't clean out the metal thing from before.
You didn't clean out the
previous
metal
time.
thing.
Well, I'm not going to criticize it for what happened.
Yeah.
No, it's not what you're criticizing.
That's just why it overheats. It overheats.
They realized it, forgot to take one of them out.
Right.
By the way, I was told, that's what Fred Dan said, quite a scientist also, that you should always put a little bit of water on the bottom underneath before you put in the, right?
Makes it much easier to get out the.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but also he said something about it burning true and not going out. I don't know why that would be, but it's, no, but it was funny. But fortunately it went out. So we didn't have to worry about using the first.
Yeah. So he says here, just to finish up and then we'll stop. He says here, there's another advice that's given here in the Chuvas of the Maril. The Magen agrees with this. The Yasim Klimi Ojom Tachas Al Shulchan. Better. Why don't you just put the thing there for underneath the table? B'Shabbos Achar Achila Yasir As HaShulchan. Here I have an idea, right? They used to use movable tables, so let's say you have this thing here and it's dripping, and it appears that it's going to drip. Right, and or maybe it's already dripping. And now we finished our meal. We take the table away. Before Shabbos, I set up the thing on the ground so that it's already there. I move it. Oh, it's catching it. No big deal. And that's not mevatel kli mehecheno because it was set up from before Shabbos. Because that's really the second thing that the Shulchan Aruch said, that umuta lipno b'ojom. If you do this before Shabbos starts, you know why it's not mevatel kli mehecheno? Because I set up the kli to catch the oil. Right. So that's not me mevatel kli mehecheno. It's not a rabbanon here of breaking of sort of the syrup of breaking up the breaking the kli. Maybe we'll stop here because people around the table have already left because it's, I guess, probably pretty late. So we'll finish this one and we'll finish the pay. But that category of mevatel kli mehecheno, as I anticipated, is like a new idea sometimes in the mind. Like, wait a minute, like I took this plate that I'm allowed to use and I caught something with it that's, it itself was muktzah. So now I've ruined this because now I can't do anything with this plate. As opposed to, and we'll talk about why can I do it with the other substances, the fats and the wax. There, it's useless. So again, assuming that the wax is not stuck to the plate. If the wax is stuck to the plate, nothing I can do. But assuming that I can shake it off or whatever, because you are allowed to shake off muktzah. You can't directly sometimes touch it, but if you can shake
fat is different from oil is puzzling.
The presumption here is that there's no. Of course, you could always use it for something, but there's no. I guess the average person, as opposed to oil, who will say, "Oh, I'm not going to throw that out. The oil is so valuable." Will say with the fats, like, get this off my plate. I'd rather, to me, this has basically zero value.
In other words, you're not going to take the plate because it has valuable oil and even wash it.
Correct.
Run out of the water.
Correct. Here is like I rather would just get this. So we'll finish up that discussion next week. But that's this new idea that's sort of we have to introduce of about the klima echeno, and the next time you have your oil lamp, is dripping, you'll think about this.
Yeah, I'm sort of lost in this. I thought Ashkenazim, really valued schmaltz.
Ah.